Sports on Tap from DKPittsburghSports.com. We are here live at Mike's Beer Bar here in the North Shore of Pittsburgh, where they have 500 beers at all times, 80 on tap, and 50 local craft breweries.
We've got 4 here that we're going to try. Can I start now?
No, wait, Dale, we have to announce the beers. My name's Chris Carter. I'm here with Dale Lally. We're talking about Pittsburgh sports. Thanks for joining us today. All right, Dale, now we'll get to it. You can announce the first beer.
It's the Grist House, the Pulse. It's a 6% beer. It's smooth and full of flavor. The Pulse comes in strong with a curated combination of Denali, Ella, El Dorado, and Centennial hops, bringing a big tropical fruit and citrus aroma.
Well, okay.
Now,
it's a lot of words.
Y'all know me.
He's about to just chug this thing. He's about to just chug this thing. I'm going to sip on it.
We're not drinking wine here. I don't care what it smells like. I don't care. I just want to drink it.
I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to savor it. This man's just going to chug it. That's fine. Look at this guy. It's an animal.
It's fruity, just like it said on the paper.
Anyways, Dale,
I was thirsty.
You were thirsty. I saw that. Dale, you got back from Miami. You got to be in Miami for the Super Bowl.
I was thirsty down there too.
Apparently, it's a lot hotter down there too. But the Chiefs beating the 49ers. I am so sad that Hunter can't be here because I told him for 2 weeks that the Chiefs were going to beat the 49ers.
I was here for that.
But he just didn't believe me. He thought I was crazy. But you had a chance to be around the madness that was the Super Bowl. What was your takeaway, not just from the game, but also the entire event of this year?
That was the 7th Super Bowl that I've covered, and each year it just keeps getting bigger and bigger in terms of the media press and the general. This was a tough Super Bowl to cover, and fans don't care about that. They care about the game, but from a coverage standpoint, everything was an hour away from no matter where you were at.
Yikes.
Whether you were going to the media center, whether you were going to the Chiefs hotel, whether you were going to the 49ers hotel. So it made it really difficult, to cover. Miami's very spread out. Somebody asked me in my live Qs today, what was the best Super Bowl site, the best place to have a Super Bowl? Indianapolis is by far the best. If they were going to hold the Super Bowl in Indianapolis every year, I'd be all in.
It's just
I know it's a cold
right
weather
there.
city. They're built to do stuff like that. Everything's downtown. There's hundreds of hotels downtown, and you can walk inside. You never have to go outside if you don't want to.
Right. You told me about that because it was like freezing outside, but you guys there's so much easy ways to get around that you don't have to deal with it.
I spent more time on buses last week in Miami than I did in high school.
Jeez.
It was not fun. It made it tough to file things quickly, and that was a big part of just the week itself. But overall, I thought the game was good.
Yeah, it was a great game.
Much like that last beer. And I thought that it was a productive week for Steelers fans, especially because they got yet another Hall of Fame inductee.
Yes, and we'll get right into that right after we
drink this next beer.
It's the Southern Tier Pittsburgh Brewed Galaxy. It's brewed Galaxy Fog. It's brewed right here in Pittsburgh. It's 6.5%, single hop, New England style. Boo.
Are they allowed to serve a New England style beer in Pittsburgh?
We are, sir. But it's New England style IPA brewed exclusively with Australia's Galaxy hops. Cheers, good sir.
Smells like Tom Brady.
Smells like, that's not a good thing. Wait, how do you know what Tom Brady smells like?
I've covered him in Super Bowls. It's okay.
Just okay?
It's okay.
Southern Tier, the Pittsburgh beer.
It's okay.
I like it.
You like that New England style stuff.
I think I do. But what a lot of Steelers fans like this weekend.
It didn't taste like clam chowder, by the way.
No, it didn't taste like clam chowder, and that I appreciate. But a lot of fans loved your story on Troy Polamalu. Everyone knows he was inducted to the Hall of Fame this weekend, but my man Dale here got the story of the entire event for Pittsburgh, and that was that Troy Polamalu explaining why he's been so far distanced away from the Steelers. Dale, can you go into just how you led into that conversation, things that you took out of it?
Yeah, the way the whole thing took place, it was a long day for me. I got up at 5 a.m. to get down to the media center, or actually we're actually at the Lowe's Hotel to do the voting for this year's Hall of Fame stuff. We had to be there at 7 o'clock, and was easily an hour for us to get down there. So I drove down with Jeff Hobson of Cincinnati.com, and we got there. We went in. The voting got finished around 2:30, but we didn't know who got in. You go through the whole process of presenting the guys. You talk about all the guys. We finally got done. We had to talk about 15 guys. There was discussion on each one, and from there we went over to the honors event, which they were going to start taping that at 4.
Wow.
We got there right before 4, and realistically, it was about a mile away. That's how much traffic there was on South Beach. So I had an idea by that point, because all of us were talking on the bus. All the electors were on the bus, or the ones that were going to the selection event, and they were all chiming in. Oh, my guy didn't make it. Armando Seguero from the Miami Dolphins was presenting Zach Thomas. He actually got off the bus at one point.
Mid-ride?
Yeah, we were just pulling out. He got a text. He goes, "Oh, can I get off now?" And
That's
okay, I guess
insane.
Zach Thomas didn't make it.
Wow.
And
Wait, so how did he get inside that Zach Thomas didn't make?
We're texting different guys.
Okay.
Texting the teams, that kind of stuff. I was getting some information from, from guys, if they got the knock on the door, that kind of stuff. So by the time we got over there, I knew who was going in. I knew who had been eliminated. Let's put it that way. But I couldn't, because we were told not to, or asked not to tweet anything out. We really couldn't let that information out until everything had been announced, because you wanted to give them time to knock on everybody's doors, because obviously they got to do 15 guys, and they had them sequestered on different floors within the hotel. So it took some time for David Baker, the head of the Hall of Fame, to go knock on everybody's door
and let the guys
and let the guys know who didn't make it.
Right.
That's the most respectful thing to do. So I waited, until the honors show started at 4. I knew it by that time. I knew everybody was over there. That's when I released the news that Polamalu had made it. So they did their little thing on for the honors show, and then they brought them back to us. They had those guys on a dais with some of the new, Cower was there, and Donnie Shell was there, some of the guys who had also made it in the Centennial show, and you were allowed to, they opened it up for questions. It was really kind of a cool thing. I got up and asked the first question, and I asked Troy, what it felt like to be going in with Bill Cower in the Hall of Fame class, the guy who drafted him. And as soon as he saw me, he got a big smile on his face. He's like, "Hey, how you doing?" I'm like, "Yeah," 'cause I hadn't seen him in 5 years.
But that's awesome. You covered him for his
time.
entire career. And now you're sitting here talking to him, and he recognized you. I think that's a really cool thing.
But it just, as soon as they were done, they said, "Okay, we're going to let these guys break off and do individual interviews, or do their whatever." But Troy, being the headliner basically of the class, they took him, and he did the NFL Network, and then they took him for Sirius Radio, and they took him for another thing. So I'm waiting, and I talked to Cower, and I'm waiting then, and this thing's starting to break up. The honors show is over. People were starting to leave, and I'm still waiting for Troy to come back out. And I made it known to the Hall of Fame people that I wanted to talk to Troy. Like, yeah, we'll get him for you, not a problem. And so about 45 minutes to an hour after all the interviews were done, basically, Troy finally comes back out, and they bring him over. And we had a great 10 to 15 minute conversation. Troy's Troy. He just doesn't change. It's always interesting.
He's still that humble guy that doesn't really hype anything up.
Yeah, and I didn't want to ask him, like, "Hey, are you excited about going to the Hall of Fame?" Of course he's excited about going to the Hall of Fame.
Right.
And that was the nice thing. The Hall of Fame people, it wasn't just me waiting for him. There were some other Pittsburgh media there waiting for him. But they brought him directly to me.
Nice.
And didn't let the other people in.
Oh, so exclusive right here.
So I don't know that I would have asked the questions that I asked him had it been in a group setting.
Right.
I might have waited till the end, and maybe then he was ready to go. But since I got him one-on-one, I'm like, I got to ask him, what's going on with some of this stuff that, the burning questions that have been waiting to be answered for 5 years. Yeah. Why have you stayed away? Was this as nasty a breakup as some people, wanted us to believe?
Before you continue your story, we need to stop staying away from our beer list.
Okay.
And we need to revisit our third beer, but we'll continue right there.
This is the Nightmare Brewing Lingchi. It's an Asiatic sour ale with...
The way you said it! I'm sorry, it was just funny. I love how you paused and built up for it. I think you said it right, but it was just the way.
Are you an apricot or are you an apricot guy?
I'm an apricot guy.
Okay, I'm an apricot guy, which makes sense. Apricot, peach, rice sugar, and candied ginger.
8.1%. With all those flavors, you think that this would be? You think this would be? This is our heaviest beer tonight, and all those flavors are in there.
Yeah, this might be a diabetic killer. I don't know.
Oh.
It's sweetish, but it's got a little sour to it.
Right, the sour kicks in.
It's almost like a whiskey sour.
Right. I appreciate those type of flavors. But you were talking about how
sour.
Yeah, it's sour. It's the aftertaste. I love the mix there. So it hits you with a 1-2 punch. But you had Troy Polamalu by yourself, and you appreciated that. So how did he start opening up to you? Just when you just asked him the right questions?
I mean, I started by asking him about his kids, and you know, that was how I approached, you know, whether or not he was excited about going into the Hall of Fame, because his sons had always been there. They were at training camp. They were there after every game. They were there a lot, and you know, the guys who've been in the locker room, we get to see them grow up, basically, from the time that they were, you know, 2 feet tall to, you know, running around like crazy, and I knew that they were there. And so I asked him, I said, you know, do your kids kind of, do they realize what this is like now? This is a pretty big deal that you're going into the Hall of Fame. And, you know, we talked a little bit about that, and then I said, look, I got to ask you, you know, why you don't come back? You know, a lot of people want to know.
Right.
And, you know, he opened up, and, you know, he could be, throughout his career, very insightful, especially if you got him in those one-on-one situations. Yeah. If you got him in a scrum where there were a lot of people there, he didn't open up quite as much.
That's natural.
Yeah, and that's very much every player. You have to, you know, develop those one-on-one, those personal relationships, and it was nice to see that, you know, even after 5 years, not having seen him for 5 years, that we still had that connection, that we could still talk. He still respected me as a journalist like I respected him as a player.
That's amazing. And I gotta say, it's funny when you brought up in your article like how his kids see him in Madden now. One of the funniest things, I used to play Madden a lot. I don't have time anymore these days. But after Troy retired, normally what happens after a player retires in Madden, they're like presented in God mode. Like they're given superstar powers and
he already had them.
Well, he already had them. But the thing was, you couldn't get a Troy Polamalu. Like he was like non-existent from the game. I'm like, what is this? He's not Barry Bonds. He doesn't have this steroid moniker over him. Like because that's a lot of baseball games won't put Barry Bonds in their game. So I was like, why isn't Troy around? And now I get it. It's like when you brought up, he wanted to show he's not just a football guy.
He wanted the separation from the game.
Right, and I understand
He did not want to be known as just Troy Polamalu, the football player. He wanted to branch out and have a clean break from football. Maybe that changes now that he's gone into the Hall of Fame. We'll see. I think he'll be back a little bit more, obviously more than he has been. I think we'll see him at some of the Steeler events, you know, when they honor some of the teams that he played on, things like that. But he's never been about that. It was That was never his thing.
He was never out the fame. He was always about just, he wanted to do his job. He wanted to do it well.
And he loved to play football, but he doesn't love to watch the game.
That was the craziest thing I read about your article. When he said, I don't really watch football, I was like,
he didn't do that in his entire career. He watched so much game tape during the week that
it just drove him nuts.
Yeah, watching a game live probably had no enjoyment level for him. I mean,
I can't. No, listen. I'm sitting here watching college tape, y'all. So I love watching.
But he would do that, like he would watch
as his job.
He would watch 30 to 40 hours of tape a week of the opponents, and watching not just the wide receivers, but he's watching the offensive linemen. He's watching the running backs,
and that's why he could time a snap and be like, "I'm jumping over the pile on this moment," because he knew what everyone always did, and that's just part of the greatness that he has. We got one more beer to get to.
We're going to do this Penn Schwarzbier?
Schwarzbier. It's 5%, light and crisp, yet sweet and smooth. It's a darker beer.
Sweet and smooth.
Yeah. Let's see what this says. Smoky. It's funny because when I taste a darker beer like that, I normally am thinking like, oh man, that's going to hit me heavy.
Your expectation is a much more bitter.
Yeah, right. and also just like to hit your stomach and be like, well, that's a winter beer, but it is really light. Penn Schwartz beer, that it's one of their smaller batches. I know, so that's actually pretty impressive. But just continuing on the Hall of Fame stuff, you presented for those guys. How close do you think Alan Faneca was to making it this year?
It was close. We didn't get the actual numbers, but I know talking to some of the other electors and just being in that room, it was close. I did talk to some of the guys on the bus ride over after the honor show, and I was told, look, there was just, there were already three Steelers going in. We just couldn't justify making a fourth.
That's okay.
And I get that. And people talk about, oh, there's a Steelers bias. Folks, there's not a Steelers bias. There are 346 players in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, or people in the Hall of Fame. 30 of them are Steelers. That's almost 10%.
Yeah, it's
There's
almost
32
10%.
teams in the NFL.
Yeah.
There's no bias against the Steelers. The Steelers, they had 3 guys going in this year out of 20.
And if they did make it a fourth, it would have been unprecedented. Has that ever happened in all of NFL history?
No.
I mean, has 3 happened in NFL history?
3 is. I mean, the first Hall of Fame class was 16 players. Mm-hmm. Every class since then has been 7.
Right,
4 to 7 players.
What we've been used to.
Yeah, and to put 4 Steelers in at the same time, I feel bad for Allen. I tried my damnedest to get him in, but it just wasn't going to. I knew going into that room that it was going to be tough. It just was because of the numbers.
Right.
And whether we like it or not, whether you feel the selection process is right or not, there is a pecking order with some of the positions. I mean, there were 3 offensive linemen in this year's finalists. And
Hutchinson, Baselli, and Faneca.
Yeah, and if you look at all three of them are deserving.
I think it's a crime that Tony Baselli has not been in the Hall of Fame yet. I remember watching that guy as a kid and thinking that, like man, that guy was great.
The thing with Baselli, he only played 91 career games.
This is true. And the Terrell Davis factor.
And he was great, but he played 91 career games. Alan Faneca played 206.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing.
He played 144 consecutive starts to end his career.
I'm not saying that Baselli should get in over Faneca, but I thought Baselli just would have naturally been in by now, so that it wouldn't have having to be a factor. And when I look at that, I just think it's so rough because you can only pick so many guys. Right. That's where the tough call comes. I get the aspect of there's already Cower and Shell and Polamalu getting in this year and picking Hutchinson over Faneca because of that. But I mean, when you look at their careers, Faneca just outmeasures him.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I drove that point home as well as I could. I just don't think I could have given maybe the best speech that I've ever given, and I don't know that it would have worked.
Right.
I had to fight for Troy Polamalu, which I was surprised.
But that's kind of what did you think? Last question before we get to our pick our top beers. What did you think of Peter King's coming out to say he didn't vote for Troy Polamalu? And there's a lot of people are mad about it or not mad about it.
I can tell you for a fact Peter was not the only one who did that.
Right.
I talked to some of the other voters, and they told me flat out that they didn't vote for Troy because they wanted to vote for the other guys to get them votes. Maybe they get in. It's a flawed argument. I'm not going to argue with. I wasn't going to argue with them.
Yeah. They have their opinions. They're going to stick to it.
To me, the bigger issue was the guys who said, "Well, we've put too many first-time guys in. We need to start looking at some of these older guys to take care of the backlog." And I get the argument. If a guy is a first-time guy, he's a first-time guy,
right?
Regardless. And I looked at those guys and I said, with all due respect, to you, if Troy Polamalu, if I turned on the tape of Troy Polamalu for my 14-year-old daughter who's never watched a single football game in her life, she would be able to pick him out as the best player in the field.
Right. And if that had happened, say that Troy Polamalu hadn't gotten in this year, and Steve Atwater
I would not have been able to come back to Pittsburgh.
That would, that would have been another thing.
I made that argument actually outside. We had a break right after the Polamalu. We talked about Polamalu, and they had brought up the whole first time thing, and I'm like, uh-oh. So we had a break, and I walked around and I talked to some different guys. And I'm like, look, guys,
I will be
you
shot.
gotta understand.
I will be shot.
I can't go back to Pittsburgh if he doesn't get in the Hall of Fame. I mean, it just doesn't happen. There'll be people waiting for me at the airport.
It's like, get rid of Dale Lawley, pick a side.
So, thankfully, it happened for him. It will happen for Alan.
his
I
life.
do believe that it will.
I think you will too.
It's kind of like picking from these beers.
Yeah.
All
That's
four were good.
All four were good.
We can
but
only pick one.
What was your best?
You know, I think I like the Grist House.
The Grist House?
Yeah.
That's fair. I think it was a very good starter. I was just blown away by the way that this hit me, and it was still not heavy. The Penn Schwarzbier, to me, that just caught me off guard. I was just, the taste that I had for it, I was just like, whoa. And then I expected it to hit my stomach and be like, yeah, I'm sitting here for a while, but I'm sitting here being fine. So, Penn Schwarzbier, you win this one. Southern Tier Galaxy, you were close.
You're fine. You drank 3 ounces. Come on.
What do you mean? Like, first of all, there's a little bit left in there. You see that? Like, he's still
Again, it's like 3 ounces of beer. He's talking about, I'm fine. Well, no kidding. You're fine. What are you, a lightweight?
First of all, you know I'm not. But all right, Dale, thanks for being on with us. Thanks for watching Sports on Tap. Be sure to tune in next week. We have another great episode.